My name's Bart Ewald, and I am a county chair for Leon County, and just recently elected to SDC for Congressional District 17. I like that I can get in a car and listen to, in 8 to 15 minutes, everything I need to know what's going on recently in Texas and in the state level and the national level and how it's going to affect me. I support the Work of Progress Texas, my check every month.
It's Friday, November 8th, 2024, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. When any team suffers the kind of loss that progressives across the country, and especially here in Texas, did this week, the agony of defeat must eventually clear a way to clarity about how that defeat came about and what to do about it. Here at the end of what's been an extraordinarily kooky week, that's the main theme out there. What happened and how do we fix it? The Quorum Report, posted late last night, the Texas Democratic Party Chairman Gilberto Hinojosa is set to announce his resignation today, per multiple sources, with the next opportunity to elect a new chair of the party coming in March. This follows an uproar over comments made by Hinojosa implying that Democrats' defense of transgender Texans bears responsibility for their massive loss this week. Specifically, he said in part, quote, "You have a choice as a party. You could, for example, support transgender rights up and down all the categories where the issue comes up, or you can understand that there's certain things that we just go too far on, that a big bulk of our population does not support," unquote. Since that quote, given to KUT Austin's Lauren McGowie, multiple progressive groups have called for his resignation. Faith Bugenhagen at the Houston Chronicle says Nancy Thompson, founder of Mothers Against Greg Abbott, took to Twitter to call Hinojosa an absent leader, saying, quote, "It is time to do the right thing. We need leadership that knocks on doors and doesn't just show up for photos. It's time for real leadership," unquote. David Ruiz, president of the Houston LGBTQ+ political caucus, said, quote, "Hate is not a Texas value, and it shouldn't be a value of Texas Democrats. Throwing blame on trans people is disgustingly demonstrative at worst and a disingenuous excuse at best," unquote. Stephanie Coythan at the San Antonio Current reports on the Stonewall Democrats of Dallas' statement, quote, "This harmful and divisive rhetoric has no place in our party. Blaming trans Texans who already face disproportionate discrimination and hostility is deeply irresponsible and counterproductive," unquote. Hinojosa quickly issued an apology for his comments, but all things considered, it's too late for that. Gilberto Hinojosa's knee-jerk singling out of the defense of trans people as a primary weakness of the Democratic platform was certainly ill-advised and ill-conceived, but one must consider the curious case of Ted Cruz's last-stage campaign content, which itself focused on demonizing trans people. Eleanor Klybanoff at the Texas Tribune writes on how Cruz's wildly successful anti-trans ads fired up Texas voters for the Republicans. Klybanoff writes, quote, "The fact that Texas's Senate candidates were arguing about youth sports rather than the economy, immigration, or the future of democracy itself was a Republican victory. For years, conservative political strategists had been pushing the party to hammer Democrats on what they see as extreme stances on gender," unquote. Progressives in Texas, including myself, found that constant barrage of anti-trans messaging from Ted Cruz both disgusting and strangely off topic. We'd been told the economy was the main thing right-leaning voters were worried about, if not immigration. But my media background told me nobody dumps millions and millions of dollars into an ad campaign without being sure that message would find a receptive audience. Perhaps the lesson here is that Republicans respond to fear generated by singling out marginalized communities, while progressives rally to protect them. This is our nature, but in this case, Democrats weren't able to field an effective counterpoint, and we got killed on it. An uncomfortable but necessary read from the Texas Tribune is linked in our show notes. Speaking personally, I think a change in leadership is very much appropriate for the Texas Democratic Party, but I also think a change at one or two top positions is not nearly enough. When the car breaks down, it doesn't usually help much to let someone else drive. A wholesale rethink of what the party does and how they do it is in order. The whole staff here at Progress Texas gathered yesterday for a deep dive into our own thoughts on the path forward. If that's on your mind, it's a good listen and may help you flesh out your own ideas, which are very important to share at a time like this. Back one click in this podcast feed, you'll find that conversation. It's not hyperbole to classify this loss as truly historic for Texas Democrats. The New York Times notes that the seismic reddening of South Texas is indeed an event of historic magnitude. The New York Times notes that nowhere in the entire nation have historically Democratic counties shifted so far and so fast in Trump's direction as they have in the RGV. Trump's win along the border provided the starkest example of what has been a broad national embrace of Republican ideas and candidates among Hispanic and working class voters. That earthquake down south may be another indicator that Democrats have fundamentally misunderstood Latino voters in Texas when it comes to their views on immigration. Still, the policy changes, likely under Donald Trump, will likely impact a great many Hispanic people here first and hardest, including many of his voters, should he institute the massive deportation effort that he and his cronies continue even now to promise. Stella M. Chavez at Texas Public Radio writes that DACA recipients, allowed as people who were brought to the country unauthorized when they were children to live and work in the U.S. without fear of deportation by that long-embattled Obama-era policy, now worry that protection may quickly evaporate under Trump. Older Hispanics who voted Republican could see their own adult children who have grown up in America sent away to countries many of them have never visited should DACA be done away with. Considering what they're threatening, that's closer than ever to reality. The early impact of all of this on Texans of color is already affecting some black Texans. Aaron Jones at CBS News says black Americans across the U.S. are reporting they're receiving anonymous racist text messages that they've been selected to pick cotton at the nearest plantation. Grand Prairie NAACP President Angela Lucky says this started wholesale immediately after the race was called for Trump, targeting students at historically black colleges not only in Texas, but in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Maryland, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina. The ugly has just begun, but now's the time to counter it. The news is bad, but it's not all bad, and by Texas terms, this last bit is actually pretty remarkable. Sarah Bahari at the Dallas Morning News digs into that massive failure in Amarillo, Texas, of all places, for an abortion travel ban to pass. Proposition A, which sought to officially designate Amarillo as a so-called sanctuary city for the unborn and prohibit the use of its local streets and highways to obtain an out-of-state abortion, only got the favor of 40% of voters there. Bahari calls that an exceedingly rare rebuke for abortion opponents in a deep red part of the state. What we see is that even staunch opponents of abortion may be thinking just clearly enough to understand that they can't violate the Constitution in their blind zeal. Perhaps room for conversation on the topic, especially as it regards the safety of people who are intentionally pregnant and wanting children, remains a possibility. Here at Progress Texas, we pledge to renew our commitment to the fight for reproductive justice, a clean environment, fair elections, good schools, and the basic universal human dignity we all deserve. Head to ProgressTexas.org for more on how to join us as we continue to unify progressive Texans in the ongoing push for positive change and the fight for what's right in the Lone Star State. The Trump win has a great many Texans worried about the future, wondering what action they can take personally, and in many cases in communities, feeling quite isolated and alone as a progressive. If that's you, know that you are not alone, and please consider supporting Progress Texas by attending one of our holiday parties for this year in Austin on December 3rd and Dallas on December 16th, both fundraising events for the fight beyond this election into the next Texas legislative session. We need your help more than ever to continue our important work, and you need quality time with folks who feel like you do. No better opportunity than our holiday parties. Individual tickets for our fundraiser are only $50, and they're on sale now. See the link in the show notes. Thanks to the Honorable Vicki Goodwin and our valued allies at Texas Gun Sense for their holiday party contributions. We look forward to seeing all of y'all. The hard reality is our funding at Progress Texas is rarely robust enough to plan much more than a quarter or two ahead, while the long game of our opponents is funded by oil billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups. At present, we do not have sufficient funding for the crucial upcoming 2025 legislative session. Our listeners form a key component of our funding here at Progress Texas, so if you're a regular listener and you're liking what we do, we could use your support as a monthly contributor. No amount is too small. Go to ProgressTexas.org/donate, and thanks to Erica Solis, Linda Melanson, and Glenda Rogers, all of whom have joined the team lately. We appreciate all of you. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Friday, November 8th, 2024. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Make it a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday.